Ceará Global 2020, o futuro em 360 graus. Um evento que trata de comércio exterior, investimento estrangeiro e cooperação internacional.
É uma promoção e realização de Câmara Setorial de Comércio Exterior e Investimentos Estrangeiros e Câmara de Comércio Brasil-Portugal no Ceará. Patrocínio de ADESE, AECIP, APSV Advogados, Assembleia Legislativa do Estado do Ceará, BF Fortship, Banco do Nordeste, Bugabu Estúdio, Café Santa Clara, FIEC, QUER, Sebrae Ceará, SP Combustíveis e Universidade de Fortaleza Unifor, Fundação Edson Queiroz. Copatrocínio de Secretaria de Turismo do Estado do Ceará. Apoio de Casa Azul Ventures, Elephant Coworking, Federação das Câmaras de Comércio Exterior, Instituto Brasil-África, Junta Comercial do Ceará, Mango Ventures, Observatório France, Trends CE, Vetor Marcas e Patentes, Winds for Future, apoio institucional de Apex Brasil, Fé Comércio Ceará e Complexo do PECEM, apoio tecnológico de Mob Telecom, iProject TI, TAPE, organização de Prática Eventos e Move On. Mídia Partner, Grupo O Povo de Comunicação.
Ceará Global 2020, segundo dia da nossa programação de atividades. As energias renováveis estão cada vez mais presentes nas matrizes energéticas em diversos países. E é exatamente esse o tema do nosso painel. Parcerias Público-Privadas para impulsionar o incremento de energias renováveis na matriz energética.
Sejam bem-vindos ao Ceará Global. Nesse painel vamos tratar do tema energia, especificamente da ODS 7, né, que trata de energia limpa e acessível a todos. Esse é um dos pilares das ODS. E como nosso convidado para nos responder algumas perguntas relevantes e importantes nesse contexto, temos o senhor Ivan Nuñez. O senhor Nuñez é um executivo sênior da CIFI, que é a Corporação Interamericana para o Financiamento de Infraestrutura, que é uma instituição de investimento em dívida de mercado emergente, focada no fornecimento de financiamento de infraestrutura para a América Latina e Caribe. O senhor Nuñez também trabalhou anteriormente na divisão de infraestrutura do Banco Interamericano de Desenvolvimento e lá forneceu financiamento para projetos de energia renovável de grandes desenvolvedores globais. Ivan foi responsável pela criação de produtos inovadores, como o placar sustentável do biocombustível, mecanismo de garantia de eficiência energética, ambos visando a fomentar a energia sustentável na América Latina. O senhor Nuñez também ocupou cargos nas equipes consultivas da Salomon Brothers, Morgan Stanley e ING Barings. Possui mestrado em Comércio Internacional pelo Centro de Estudos Econômicos Comerciais em Madrid, além da School of Advanced International Studies, da Johns Hopkins, em Política Internacional de Economia de Mercados Emergentes. Ele é um Socrates Fellows 2015 do Instituto Aspen e beneficiário da Bolsa de Pós-Graduação Carla Madrid e as bolsas Marie Krauss e Johns Hopkins. Então, temos aqui um palestrante extremamente abalizado para tratar dessas questões de tanta relevância, principalmente para o Nordeste do Brasil, especificamente para o Ceará. Nós sabemos que o Ceará foi um pioneiro nas energias renováveis, sobretudo de fonte eólica e solar, respondendo hoje por cerca de 16% da produção nacional de energia eólica, de capacidade instalada, e já com estudos para lançamento de parques offshore e também se desenvolvendo bastante no mercado da geração distribuída a partir de fonte solar. Então, sem mais delongas, gostaria de passar agora a fazer as perguntas ao senhor Nuñez, que vão ser feitas em inglês, mas que serão oportunamente traduzidas quando da apresentação desse painel. Então, quando vocês estiverem vendo essas perguntas, já terão a tradução disponível. Gostaria de agradecer ao senhor Nuñez. Ivan, thank you very much for being with us today. It's a very important panel. that interests a lot Brazil and specifically our region. So I would like to start asking you to tell a little bit about your experience in financing projects of renewable energies in Latin America.
This is how everything is working these days, right? With the COVID crisis, noises coming in, connections going down. Anyways, I was saying that thank you so much for inviting me to the meeting. And I was saying that basically things have changed a lot since we started working on, or I started working on renewable energy. It was originally, I think, most of a beautiful idea in the minds of many. It was costly. The capex of renewable energy projects was extremely high, and governments had to, some governments had to come up with costly ways of financing. Some of them prove even hurtful for the economy, such as the case in Spain, for example, where I come from. But it's been a really long way, and I think there's been a parallel movement of the cost of developing these projects becoming increasingly more affordable, more widespread, and also the understanding of the people, of all walks of life, of the importance of environment and the importance of global warming. I think that's become generally understood. And I think for the past probably 8 years, probably 10 years, we've seen an increased amount of money going into renewable energy, which has also contributed to the cheapening of the production of energy with those sources. So not only technology has been helping, improvements in the value chains, manufacture in China, India, they caught up with the capacities that only a few European producers had in the beginning, and I'm thinking wind right now. I think solar. China right from the outset, they were very competitive at it, and that has been coupled with more and more money, new rules, and new strategies coming to most of the financial institutions, saying you have to deliver this type of projects. This is where the future is heading, and it's strategic for us to do this. And that has led to cheaper financing costs. And right now, I would say, it's one of the stars in terms of financing renewable energies in general. On the other hand, we have other very, very efficient type of energy, which is energy efficiency. And I think there is still a lot to do on that front, despite there's always been the interest of doing that. And we recently had the opportunity of financing an energy efficiency company. And we discovered, the IRRs are 40%, 50% in some of those investments. And the problem is small size of many of those investments. And I think coming up with more creative ideas, more efficient ideas, new vehicles that allow to tap into not only the bigger scale projects, but also a smaller scale, not only renewable energy, but energy efficiency projects, is one of the challenges and where the opportunities lie for institutions like mine.
Great. When you talk about energy efficiency, Ivan, in smaller structures, which amount are we talking about? A financing amount and the total capex?
Well, there are many ways in which you can do energy efficiency, right? You can actually, my first project that when I started working at the Interamericana Development Bank was in Brazil, and there was a steel company in Minas which wanted to, steel is very, very intensive in energy, and they needed to change. They needed to they needed to increase their capacity, and therefore they needed to think about the technology, right? And sometimes companies only, when they really need to come across a new investment and they have to disrupt the cycle of operation, they think about cost. And when they think about cost, you know, energy efficiency, if they have the right advisors, energy efficiency comes into play, right? So that was a huge investment. That was also, we financed that with Japanese yen because, you know, the interest rate of Japanese yen was fantastic. We could get a very nice hedge, and it was huge, right? The same has happened with many companies, but at the same time, when we wanted to delve into the smaller size of projects, and that also happened to me later on, when we had a project with the United Nations, and we had to create a fund because basically there is all these costs to analyze projects that are big and small, and the cost is very similar. So when a bank that is first not familiar with financing the big projects, which there are not so many, you have to have a big bank to pay, you know, people like me to be devoted into doing that, and those banks typically focus to big projects. There are few banks such as CIFI that devote to projects that are, you know, can be 30 million, 40 million, 50 million. We can also do 200 million, right? But when you go to 100, 200 million, everything is very crowded by all the big banks. So the question of having those people looking into smaller projects is, many banks don't have those people, this type of experts, and second, it's very costly. So one of the things that we had to use was grant money to try to build that know-how into banks and that awareness. The idea was that banks realized that energy efficiency, in the end, this kind of weaker companies doing energy efficiency to big clients would get return and not be afraid anymore. And I think it took time, really. It takes so much time to change the culture, and only when, I mean, the fund was able to deliver, but was only able to deliver to the biggest energy efficiency companies, right? So sometimes I think it's too early to do things, and it's a good, you know, it's something that you have to try, but it takes time, right? And it usually works when a bank sees that one of the competitors has become big, has become successful, and then everybody realizes, because it's proven, you know, there is a reality, oh, there was so much business in here, right? And that takes time and effort, and I'm not sure many banks can really put that effort into that, right?
Great, thank you. Ivan, you talked about an important aspect, which is culture. And I would like to hear a bit more, how was your experience? Because as Brazilians, what we hear a lot is that specifically Brazil, but also I'm aware of other legislations in South America, especially. In general, people tend to think that we have a lot of barriers and it's difficult to make business in Brazil, in elsewhere in South America. I would like to hear from you, how was your experience, if that's really true, and how can, from your side, from the perspective of financing, we can improve that if that's the case?
Wow, that's a really good question. I mean, the last project in renewable energy, if we set aside the one in Chile for energy efficiency that we did actually, was in El Salvador, right? So I mean, I'm in different countries in Latin America. I would not say that, you know, that definitely Brazil is the most complicated one, but you know, definitely for somebody that is an international lender coming to Brazil, having the, you know, all the limitations in the exchange of the cash flows outside, having to do the rough thing, all the taxes is different, and also, you know, you need to have the best thing for Brazil, and I think why, you know, CIFI so far has been more limited in its capacity to doing projects in Brazil, the problem that I didn't have with IDB is the capacity of getting funding in real. And we are focused right now on actually raising funding in real. That is so important, having real and being able for this type of projects to lend it with a sufficient tenor that, for a long time we were limited by the tenor of the swaps that Brazilian banks could give us. So I think developing a good capital market that it's open to that and supporting this type of hedging mechanism attracts foreign investors. And I mean, all the simplifications are positive. But I wouldn't say, I mean, Brazil is, I have a soft spot for your country, so I cannot really say that it's much more complicated than anywhere else, but yeah.
Okay, so we've talked about the beginning of renewable energies, and I was wondering how is your vision of the market of renewable energy market in the last 5 years, and also maybe making a link with the current situation. Has the COVID crisis affected it in any way whatsoever?
Well, that's a great question, and actually I can link it a little bit with what you asked me about Brazil. There's a good example of I think an important change in a market in Latin America in terms of renewables, and I think that was Mexico, right? Mexico before the Reforma, Mexico after the Reforma, and Mexico in the coronavirus times. Before the Reforma, we had a set of PPAs, of offtake agreements, which were denominated in the local currency. Not really looked up in detail in respect to bankability. So after the Reforma, that changed. Before the Reforma, no international lenders able to get into the country and lower the cost of financing and bring new structures, new ideas. After the Reforma, boom, you start getting all these investments. No limitations with the swaps, as I said, not all the problems that I have been facing in Brazil, and you have everything is dollarized. Competition begins between lenders. And what you could see is, in parallel, all these interest rates push down in the US and in Europe in order to maintain the economies moving, despite the crisis and the threats. That's kind of been a general thing central banks have been doing. So that translates into European money, into American money coming very cheap in the country, based on those dollarized PPAs, and interest. I mean, and the megawatt hour being bid on the late launch moves from like 60 to 40 to 50 to 30 to below $30, just because of the cost of financing of the big players, right? I think that was that strategy proved very, very successful. We all have been waiting for years for a country like Mexico in doing so. The story has not been exactly the same in all countries, obviously, but I think it could be a good idea or a good story for Brazil. Regarding what is happening with coronavirus, what I see is depends on the developer, but many developers are facing delays and concerns, especially where there is market risk, where there is no PPA. Nobody is sure of how demands have gone down radically. Prices have gone down radically. So if there is any kind of a spot risk in your project, those projects have stopped. Many banks have their clients pulling their credit lines and using to use that money just to survive. And those banks are being drained out of resources in many cases. So those projects are stopping as well. And on the other hand, I see projects which kind of developers that are pushing. They have the liquidity. on a case-by-case basis. Some of them sold before the problems started, sold some assets. They are rich, cash rich. They are finding institutions such as mine, which, we happen to have been issuing commercial paper, green bonds just before the crisis, and we have lending capacity. You get lucky in this moment, you can do business. But in general, the aspect is not so great, I would say.
The market is still uncertain. I would say people are still a bit unsure of how things will develop from now on, right? Yeah,
absolutely. But again, whoever bought a project and has a PPA, and they are pushing to find lenders, and again, we keep on getting opportunities. It's amazing, and the question is who we are going to be co-financing with. We pride ourselves on being efficient and fast, and we try to find this type of institutions, local institutions and local banks, and some of them are really busy with all these restructurings that they have to do of loans that are not doing so well. Imagine if you have transportation loans, your rodovias, traffic, right? So you have all your people, all these experts that I said on infrastructure, working on that and helping their portfolio teams. And then the cash that they had being drained by companies that are their clients, their corporate clients that they want to support and not have problems with, right? So it's become a little bit more difficult these days.
I understand. When you talked a bit about Mexico Reforma before the reform and after the reform, what is your experience in Brazil with the financial situation in Brazil, and what kind of structure do you think could apply to our situation?
Well, that is a good question. As I said, when I've approached Brazil, I had these limitations on tenor, which really has not made me competitive in Brazil up to now. And the way we are overcoming this is basically by raising funds internally. Having funds internally depends on the cost of funds. That cost, you translate that into projects. So again, if you don't have a PPA that is directly proposed in dollars, and we have to finance with real, will depend on the availability of funds in real and how much an investor, a Brazilian investor, is charging. So as a capital provider, debt provider in this case, that is a very important piece, right? I mean, then you have all the advantages of importing equipment, how you can, exempt equipment and reduce certain limitations, of course, on the CapEx, the cost of development. If you have to ask for licenses, they tend to be expensive and sometimes different in different states. But I mean, as a general rule, opening to foreign investors, reducing the currency, the cost of the currency, has been my I would say one of my problems, my personal problems. If you get that out, again, I've done stuff in other countries in Central America, no problem. Brazil, absolutely no problem.
Okay, I understand. Does CIFI or any other institution you know of or you work with usually adopt the structure of public-private partnerships? Has that worked with you? What do you think about that in general? Because this has been a trend in Brazil in the last years. Government has not enough funds to finance, especially infrastructure. So we are searching for different ways of getting that achieved. So private-public partnerships has been a way. And in your point of view, from your perspective, how does that work?
Well, I think it's when you have kind of an such as this what renewable energy was like, I don't know, 15 years ago. You need the government to step in, right? I think the government stepped in Brazil in two ways. One was beneficial, and what is beneficial in the long run, and is the development of these PPPs, right? This Parceria Público-Privada. Then there is another type of involvement that I think was good in the short run, but then it has kind of it's going to prove insufficient now, which is the involvement of BNDES, right? I think BNDES was the great financier, a very inexpensive financier that really pushed Brazil forward. The problem is how it kind of crowded out probably other institutions, and the necessity to maybe adapt those PPPs to get this and to adapt Brazil to getting this funding from other sources. And I mean, let's not forget there is a good moment, and now if there is not that capacity, let's change, and there is this opportunity for Brazil to review how they're going to allow these lenders such as my institution to come in more often.
Great, Ivan. And perhaps maybe a last question, and maybe your final comments. How do you see we talked about this a little bit, but how do you see the renewable energy market as a mature market in Europe? How do you see that in the next 5 years in Europe, Asia, and Latin America, actually worldwide? How do you see the different spaces acting in renewable energy?
Well, I think there is definitely a big push in favor of this type of energy as being the basic, the go-to energy for, I think, as I said, for the population in general and many of the financial institutions, right? You are bringing a coal project to my institution. Gas project is not something that we're going to be looking at with far the same interest as definitely the renewable energy. We are just focused on renewable energy in terms of energy. And like me, I see lots of appetite in general from that subsector of energy. When you look at Latin America versus Europe versus Asia, I have to think about the economy on those three blocks vis-a-vis what is happening with the coronavirus. And to tell you the truth, it's extremely difficult to predict what is going to happen with the coronavirus, but everybody has an opinion. My opinion is that it is heavily dependent on some cultural behavior of your people, the capacity that you have on your health system, and then your leadership. And my overall feeling has been that, Asia, due to some cultural traits, in some countries like Japan, there's not going to be much of there's going to be less of a problem, probably. China, there has been kind of a dictatorial approach to the coronavirus. They have developed their internal market very strongly. And, I see Asia in general, being able to continue with their economic pursuit in general, better than other places. I see Europe having good health systems, the South definitely bearing the grunt due to maybe the different cultural traits again, and different behaviors and different approaches from their leadership, bearing the brunt of the problem, but still good health systems, probably second block of countries to come. And those the countries in Europe very, very focused in renewable energy. So we're going to continue seeing a big push. In Asia, which traditionally hasn't been so pro renewable energy, I think we're going to see a push as well, as they've been bearing the problems posed by their coal policies, etc. So on that part of the world, definitely we'll see things coming back to normality. Whatever that normality is, probably the new normal now, and the old normal a little bit later on. And then Latin America, I mean, we have the US. For me, the US, very strong, definitely economy. They've been not doing so well with the, to put it that way, with the virus, and that's probably affecting the economy as well. And they are printing money big time for and you know, the elections are coming for voters kind of not to notice. So they are, for me, the third tier of the people who are going to be doing great, but still a great economy, and they always get quickly out of the crisis. However, the leadership that they have today is not very pro-renewable energy in general, and also the type of the return that you get nowadays. I mean, the money is very cheap in Latin America. That helps definitely, and the kind of returns that you are seeing for equity in renewables in the US is closer to 5.5, 6% with private when you have private sponsors. So, I mean, if the government keeps on pushing the interest rate down, despite not being very friendly to renewable energy, I think renewable energy is still going to happen, as everything will continue happening in the US, because it's better to have your money with with an off-taker that is, a casino, than probably not today, but when the crisis, when economy moves better, it will still move in the US. When we get to Latin America, for me, Latin America is the big concern, really. It's the region where I've spent most of my life working for, and I see the weaker institutions and the approach of some of the politicians a little bit kind of lenient towards the virus, and also kind of the weakest health system. So if you couple all that together, you're going to see probably more mortality than you need to see, and more concern in the citizens, probably stoppages. What we saw in England at the beginning, or in the US, is like, really, you don't have to do anything. In England, you don't have to do anything, and when the problem came, all of a sudden politicians changed their mind and start closing everything, right? I'm not sure if that's going to happen with some of the politicians, maybe in Brazil, or it will never happen. But what is for sure is you're going to have probably a higher impact in the economy. And for me, even though you are one of the richest region in terms of renewable resources, maybe the crisis is going to take a little bit longer for Latin America to develop. That is my concern.
Ivan, there was, thank you very much for this answer and all the answers. Thank you for participating with us. It was a very deeply and enlightening conversation. We've learned a lot, and I'm pretty sure our audience in the future will take advantage of your knowledge on that market. Thanks again very much. Wish you a great rest of the week. Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Mariela. Obrigado a todos, e eu espero poder falar com vocês cedo de novo, e que para fazer projetos no Brasil.
Claro que sim. Estamos ao dispor.
Abraço.
Um abraço.